Timbuktu, an ancient city of Mali in Africa, a place where the sands of the Sahara blows and the Niger River cradle the hopes of its people. There lived a woman named Amina. She was a widow, left alone in this vast world with 5 daughters after the sudden death of her husband, Bakari. Bakari had been a respected scholar, a man of wisdom and kindness, and his death had sent ripples of sorrow through the ancient city of Timbuktu. But one day, Bakari fell down from a palm tree and died, leaving Amina to fend for herself and their daughters, Miriam, Yasmin, Zara, Saliha, and Fatima. Amina, sad and lonely, with the burden of taking care of her 5 daughters, was not a woman to be easily defeated. Despite the sorrow that threatened to consume her, she found solace in her work. She was known across the city for her poultry, a small flock of chickens that provided not just food, but a means to sustain her family. Her chickens were more than just birds. They were her lifetime, a way to ensure that her daughters, Saliha, Fatima, Miriam, Yasmin, and Zara, would have the opportunity to go to school and build a future beyond the dusty streets of Timbuktu. The city itself was a marvel, a place where the wealth of Mali's empire was in full display. The streets were lined with grand houses adorned with intricate carvings and gold-plated doors. The smell of spices filled the city, and the sounds of music, a reflection of the culture that had thrived here for centuries. But beneath this opulence, Amina lived a modest life, focusing on the simple joys that her chickens and her daughters brought her. One evening, Amina received a letter from her sister Zara, who lived in the city of June, not far from Timbuktu. Zara's life was very different from Amina's. She had married a wealthy merchant, and her children were attending university in the capital city of Bamako. The letter was filled with the news of Zara's children, how they were excelling in their studies, and how they had grand plans for the future. Amina read the letter with mixed emotions. She was happy for her sister, of course, but the letter also served as a dark reminder of the disparities in their lives. While Sarah's children were preparing for successful careers, Amina's daughter was still struggling to make it through school. The contrast was painful, and Amina couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. Why had fate been so kind to Zara and so cruel to her? But Amina knew that envy would not help her daughters. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, determined to use it as a motivation. If Sarah's children could achieve such heights, then so could her own daughters. She just needed to find a way to make it happen. The next morning, Amina made a decision. She would expand her poultry business. She would buy more chickens, sell more eggs, and perhaps even start raising hens for meat. It would be a risk. She would need to borrow money to buy the additional chickens, and there was no guarantee that she would be able to sell enough to pay off the debts. But Amina had no other choice. She was determined to do whatever it took to ensure her daughter's success. With a heavy heart, Amina approached one of the wealthiest traders in the market, a man named Musa, who was known for lending money to those in need. Musa was a shrewd businessman, and he agreed to lend Amina the money, but at a high interest rate. Amina hesitated for a moment, knowing that the debt would weigh heavily on her, but she had no other option. She agreed to his terms. With this, she was able to expand her poultry business. One day, Zara invited Amina to visit her in June. Amina hesitated at first. She couldn't afford to leave her chickens unattended, and the cost of the journey was more than she could easily manage. But Zaliha, her daughter, insisted. After much persuasion, Amina agreed. She left Zahila in charge of the chickens and set off for June, hoping that the trip would provide some much needed rest and inspiration. When Amina arrived in June, she was struck by the city's beauty. The grand mosque with intricate mud brick design was a testament to the city's rich history and culture. Zara's home was equally impressive. A large, comfortable house filled with beautiful furnishings and decorations. Amina couldn't help but feel a pang of envy again, but she pushed it aside, determined to enjoy her time with her sister. Unknown to Amina, Malik, a young man who was a merchant in the city of Timbuktu, had been spying on Amina's poultry business. While Amina was away, he would sneak into the poultry farm, quietly stealing Amina's chickens that was meant to sponsor her children to the university. He sold some to other merchants and also entertained them with cooked chicken for dinner. In the city, Amina and Zara sat together at the veranda watching the sunset. Zara turned to Amina with a serious expression. "Sister," she said, "I know you've been struggling. You've done so much for your daughters, but I can see the toll is taking on you. Let me help you." Amina started to protest, but Zara held up a hand. "I'm not offering charity," Zara continued. "I want to invest in your business. You've built something incredible from nothing, and I believe it can grow even more. With a little more capital, you could expand further, maybe even start selling your chickens and eggs to other cities. Let me be your partner." Amina rejected the offer. After spending time with her sister and motivated to ensure her children go to universities, went back to Timbuktu inspired after seeing her sister's daughters. The following day, Amina, full of joy and excitement about her poultry chicken, walked into an empty coop. She screamed. Her heart sank. The coop, usually filled with clucking of chickens and the soft rustling of feathers, was empty and quiet. All her chickens were gone. Panic and despair gripped Amina. Those chickens were her only source of income, the only way she could pay for her daughter's education. Oh, tears ran down her face as she fell to her knees, crying out to the heavens. All my hopes have been destroyed. Who did this? Who stole my chickens? Amina cried. Her children tried to calm her, but to no avail. Saliha, the eldest, placed a comforting hand on her mother's shoulder. "Mother, we will find a way," she said softly. Amina screamed and cried. Malik, in his house, felt something strange coming out of his body. At first, it was just a tingle, but as the day wore on, it grew more intense. He scratched and scratched until, to his horror, he noticed that his skin was sprouting feathers, chicken feathers. "What is this?" He screamed in pain. He could hear Amina crying for her chickens. Throughout that month, Amina cried and cried. As she did so, chicken feathers spread throughout Malik's body. He was ashamed and he could not come out of his house. The pain was too much. He tried to hide the feathers, covering them with his clothes, but they continued to grow. No matter what he did, the feathers persisted, a constant reminder of his crime. Days passed and the feathers only became more numerous. Malik could no longer sleep, could no longer think of anything but the feathers. He was consumed by guilt and fear. Knowing that stealing Amina's chicken was wrong, he stole from a widow. Amina had a dream and God told her he was going to fight for her. She waited for days for God to expose the thief, but she ran out of being patient. One day, out of anger, she started cursing. "Whoever has taken my chickens, may their conscience torment them until they confess. May they go blind. May hot water fall on their heads from the sky." Amina was enraged. She was angered. Unknown to her, as she was cursing, the feathers on Malik started falling off. Each day she cursed, but as soon as she stopped cursing, the feathers would return on Malik's body. Eventually, Amina rained more curses and all the feathers on Malik disappeared. Malik crept through the streets of Timbuktu, heading towards Amina's house. Malik knocked softly on Amina's door. Amina opened the door, surprised to see a young man she did not recognize. His face was pale, and he looked as though he had not slept in days. He trembled as he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I am the one who stole your chickens, he confessed. When I was in pain, I told my father to sell his most expensive land so I could repay you for the pain I brought to you. But when you took matters into your hand by cursing me, I got better. All the feathers disappeared. Now that I am whole again, you are not getting any money from me. Lesson learned. When God tells you he will take care of your situation, always allow him to.